إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وإن كل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار أما بعد فاتقوا الله عباد الله حق التقوى وراقبوه في السر والنجوى أيها المسلمون أيها الإخوة الكرام. When Yusuf alayhi salam, our beloved prophet, had seen the famous dream, the dream about the 11 stars, the sun and the moon, and he told his father. His father then responded. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, قَالَ يَا بُنَيَّ. His father said, my beloved child, لا تقصص رؤياك على إخوتك. Don't narrate your dreams onto your brothers. You've had this dream. Don't go telling your brothers about this dream. Why? فَيَكِيدُوا لَكَ كَيْدًا. Because immediately your brothers, they are going to scheme against you. They are going to make an elaborate scheme, a plan against you. Now, in saying these words, there's a couple of very important things that come forward. First and foremost, just because someone said they had a dream, and that dream, by the way, it's extremely hard to interpret. It's not an easy dream to interpret for anyone. So clearly his brothers, they don't even know how to interpret basic dreams, let alone complex dreams. So we need to understand, even if Yusuf alayhi salam, he goes to his brothers and he tells them the dream, they might not even know what it means. If so, why is it then that they would hear this dream and think, we have to get him, we have to scheme against him, we have to do something? Why would that be? This is actually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's way of telling us that there are some people who exist who are so psychologically insecure, they are on the edge, that they may not even understand what you have said to them, what you have shared with them, what you have narrated to them. But that doesn't matter. Even if there is the slightest hint that in what you said, there was something praiseworthy about you. Some good came to you. Sajda was done towards you or because of you. If that much is there, then even if the people don't understand what you're saying, they will still go crazy. They are just on the edge. They are waiting to hear something to give them a reason to snap. They are unstable. And their father Yaqub alayhi salam, being as wise as he is, as mature as he is, as knowledgeable as he is, he knows what his other sons are like. He knows they're on the edge. He understands. But of course, a child on the other hand, a young kid, Yusuf alayhi salam, a child is not going to know this. He won't know that if he goes and narrates his dream to his brothers, something evil might occur. A kid will say something to his brothers and not think twice about it. Actually, even us as adults, we don't think twice about many of the things we say. We share good news to anyone and everyone, and we don't give it a second thought. So what of a mere child? What does he know? Yet in this ayah we are learning to be conscious, to be intelligent, to have emotional intelligence and be conscious of the people around us and what they are like. We learn here that maybe, especially within our own family, there are people who are on the verge of snapping. They are only holding on by a thread. And to those types of people, we learn that we should not even say a word. Forget saying all of the dream. Yusuf alayhi salam is advised to not even start talking about the dream. We are advised that we don't even give a hint that we are happy or that something good came our way. Because these certain types of people, they will not want to hear about you being happy or about the good that came your way. Because that alone is going to be enough for them. Because they are going to be capable of very bad things. And why do these bad things occur? Insecurity, jealousy, and of course not to mention the evil eye, which might in fact be something out of their control. But it's something we still have to protect ourselves from. The second thing we learn in this verse is, yes, of course, we all know that countless times in the Islamic narrative, we learn about the importance of family, that it is something we should have close by us, that it is a blessing, something we should treasure, something we should preserve. We have to love family. There's so many teachings in our religion that we have to have a good bond with family, to nurture that bond, to be forgiving with them, and especially the relations of blood. Yet the lesson in this part of the Quran is also telling us that there is another side of the coin. That sometimes, no doubt, family can be quite damaging. And it may even be harmful. And of course, in our lives, this could also apply to our friends too. And when they are harmful or dangerous, we are taught to be careful. And it is up to you to have the sense to know that you need to keep a distance, but to navigate the dynamic wisely, to be diplomatic, to still navigate the situation with respect. But note, the Quran also isn't calling you to fight your family or to be aggressive or assertive. But it's also not asking you to be naive, to be foolish to these things. The Quran, being divine wisdom, it's not a book that is idealistic. It is not a history book giving instructions from a human. It is guidance from the all-wise, the all-knowing. So by default, it is not idealistic. Rather, the advice it gives, it's realistic. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows all the complex dynamics that we may face. The Quran doesn't say be good to your family and your brothers and friends no matter what they do to you. And that your life will always be full of good and happiness and rainbows and flowers. The Quran does not purport this. It is wise and it is realistic. So in this case, the advice is, draw that line and sometimes don't even open your mouth to them. For example, sometimes we may have a brother or sister who has a major temper problem, or an uncle who has a serious issue going on in their life because they have been struck by a recent calamity. And you might feel guilty that you're not opening up to them. Perhaps some good news came upon you, and you know their family, they have a right to know, surely. But actually in this case, the Quran is relieving you of that burden of telling them. It's saying, no, sometimes you have to be sensible. And you have to know that some people, even within your family, may not have the best intentions for you, whether you know it or not. And whether it's out of their control or not, some people, it might not be their fault. Their inherent nature is to be jealous, is to be insecure. We are all human, and so we are naturally susceptible to all of these traits. So sometimes when people are not capable of having a healthy relationship with you all the time, and you decide to take some steps back, you are not at fault. In this case, you are being wise, strategic, cautious, just like Yaqub alayhi salam is advising his son Yusuf alayhi salam to be. And in that case, you're not the one that is supposed to be held accountable. Because verily, by being silent, you might be making things better. If you said things aloud instead, you might have caused chaos to break through. So we are taught to be precautious, to be wise and careful. Moving on, Yaqub alayhi salam also didn't say, don't trust your brothers, or don't do this because they're evil. He didn't say that, and that's the next thing I want to bring to our attention. When he did tell his son this warning, he says, La taqsus. And in the Arabic language, you can also say La taqussa or La taqussi, don't narrate. But you can also say La taqsus as it's used here. And the way it's used here, it is the most elaborate, clearly spelled out way of expressing what he just expressed. So we learn here that if you are going to tell a child to take precaution, to be careful, if the situation calls for it, like it does here, you should spell it out as clearly as possible. You should not speak in code. You should not sugarcoat it or be ambiguous because you're scared. What if the child, he gets hurt or he gets scared? We should be clear. And as a father, Yaqub alayhi salam, in his wisdom, he understands this. And he says, listen, I need to be clear. Don't tell any of this to your brothers because of the reasons I mentioned. And how did the son respond in this dynamic? He didn't then reply, as a lot of us probably would have when we were kids, why not, Dad? Why not, Father? Why can't I go tell them? And if he said this to this, Yaqub alayhi salam didn't then have to say, oh, don't tell them because just trust me, son. Don't worry. He didn't do that because he didn't sugarcoat it in the first place. The son didn't even have a reason to question. Yaqub alayhi salam, he paints the picture very clearly. He didn't say, oh son, they may not like it. Or don't tell them they might be busy with work. Or don't tell them their children, they might get confused. He did not sugarcoat it. He was extremely clear in communicating to his child, even though Yusuf alayhi salam is a very young boy. And without holding back, he said, my son, they will make a scheme against you. And for that reason, don't tell them. They will scheme against you. The next question, why would you possibly tell a young child this? Isn't this harsh? Isn't this going to be traumatic? Shouldn't you hold back at least a little bit and maybe lie here and there to gloss over it, to hold the truth back? Make it easy for the child. That's what we might think. But in this case, we learn in the Quran, no. Even for children that young, sometimes it is good to be honest, for the best. And it's not as if Yaqub alayhi salam, he said it in a hurtful way, or a harsh way, or a condescending way. Because remember, the very first part of the verse, the very beginning, how did Yaqub alayhi salam start this conversation? Ya bunayya, my beloved child, my little boy. It's as if Yaqub alayhi salam, before delivering the news, he starts this sentence metaphorically with a big hug, a holding, compassion and love, like a father should. And then he gets on to the important crux of the matter, just like a good father should as well. I need you to understand something. Don't tell your brothers because they will make a plan against you. Just don't tell them and trust me. And that is the hard truth that he delivers. And the son, MashaAllah, okay dad, he gets it. There is no rebuttal. So back to the message. Sometimes you can't hide family problems from your children because after a certain age, it may certainly affect them psychologically. And if so, it may be necessary for you to prepare them for it so that they may become mature and wise too, just like the father. Because when you shield them for it, after a certain point, they are going to find it anyway. They are smart. But of course, they would rather have heard it from you in the beginning, so that there's an open channel of communication, especially after a certain age, so that they are happy to talk about those family issues or the issues about friends to you. And so that they can be careful in how they behave or talk with certain people, so that they are protected from a young age. Pretending that everything is perfect. There are no problems in the world. Sometimes it has its place. But other times, it certainly doesn't help. It creates a block, and the children will think, no, we don't talk about these things. I have to keep it pent up. And it may eventually make it worse because they can't even come to you for help if they are scared or if something goes wrong. So many lessons we learn from just one simple exchange. بارك الله لي ولكم في القرآن الحكيم ونفعني وإياكم بما فيه من الآيات والذكر الحكيم أقول ما تصنعون وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين من كل ذنب وخطيئة فاستغفروا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله على إحسانه وشكر له على توفيقه وامتنانه وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له تعظيما لشأنه وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله الداعي إلى رضوانه صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه وإخوانه وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا. أما بعد. In just this very small exchange, my dear brothers, we are learning so much about the concept of emotional intelligence. Number one, we learn how we are supposed to communicate with our children, no matter how young they are. Number two, we learn how we are supposed to deal with the sometimes harsh realities in our families. And number three, we learn how we are supposed to be careful in talking about our private matters or our blessings. And that's something I actually didn't mention in the first part, but it is equally as important. And by doing these three things, my beloved brothers, it is actually we ourselves who are learning how to protect ourselves, our children, and even the family that you might think is troublesome. If we navigate the situations correct, we are even protecting them as well. Because we are making the best of situations, looking out for their best interest as well, and making sure we don't make the situation even worse. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help our family situations. May He protect us from the evil eye and the jealousy of those even close to us. And may He keep us from spreading our blessings. And may He make the parents and the elders of our community good at communicating with our children. And may He give those children the maturity and the wisdom to navigate the challenging situations so that they can all be raised on the right path, and that so that we can all be reunited in Jannatul Firdaus al-A'la. ثم أعلم أن الله أمركم بالصلاة والسلام على نبيك فقال في محكم تنزيل اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين وأذل الشرك والمشركين اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين وفي كل مكان ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب اللهم أعتق رقابنا ورقاب آبائنا وأمهاتنا من النار اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات إنك يا ربنا سميع قريب مجيب الدعوات برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين عباد الله رحمكم الله اتقوا الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون أقيموا الصلاة